Great, Sandy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sandy Ross, President, Health and Habitat, Mill Valley. This is my truncated version. And I want to say how much I appreciate the work that staff has put into this. But I do not want electromagnetic fields and radio frequency radiation on my property or on me, no matter where I am. And regarding purview, I really don't understand how this country, with its history and purpose of freedom, has worked its way to the point where citizens can't protect themselves. I think it's this revolving door between industry and telecom and the government. And we should have choices as to whether we have these transmissions coming onto our property. Informed consent is a basic right. One branch of the industry says these transmissions have no biological effects. Another uses them for medical purposes, and the military makes weapons out of them. So there's no doubt that they have effects. And we do know that they desiccate vegetation. You were talking with the fire department tonight. We don't want these transmissions in the hills because it dries the plants and makes them more vulnerable to fire. I believe that all transmission devices and associated equipment should be painted with danger, yellow and black writing, big letters, so anyone walking down the street can see them and avoid them if they want to. None of these fake pine trees or chimneys. And we need a list and a map of all these facilities published on the city website so that people can avoid them. Now, I'm told that fiber optics is being strung in Mill Valley now, so there may be no reason for 5G or any of the Gs on residential poles. And we should keep them, in any case, away from vulnerable populations like schools, daycare, senior, and health centers. So basically, I support passing this urgency measure tonight, and then maybe tightening it up a bit in the future as you find out what you can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. And thank you, Valerie, for letting Sandy go first. We're going to put the microphone back by the projector.
Okay. Should I just do my intro again? Okay. All right, we're here to show an informative video about close proximity microwave radiating antennas, otherwise known as small cells, which are not small at all, which you will see when you look at the power output, and you can also look at the model we have here as just one size. Thanks. Who's in charge of playing the video? Oh, there we go.
When we went out in these 11 markets, we tested for well over a year, so we could see every part of foliage, every storm that went through. We have now busted the myth that it has to be line of sight. It does not. We've busted the myth that foliage will shut it down. I mean, there was back in the days when a pine needle would stop it. That does not happen. And these things, in the 200 feet from a home, we're now designing the network for over 2,000 feet from transmitter to receiver, which...
It's really high frequency, so everybody thinks it doesn't go very far, but it's a really big pipe, and so that's what allows you to gain the super fast speeds.
So just how far will it go? 5G in action, distance and height.
We're here on top of this parking garage. We're 3,000 feet away from our radio node. The cool thing about this is we did not move the radio node. It's pointing down to serve the customers in that area. But here, even 3,000 feet away, we're still getting gig speeds.
3,000 feet away.
So we've driven about a third a mile away from the radio node. It's located over there behind the trees. We're still getting very good speeds, even though we have foliage in between.
A third of a mile. Conclusion, the least intrusive means to close a significant, There's no need to install close proximity microwave radiation 4 or 5G wireless telecommunication facilities on utility light poles. Next steps, get your city to update its municipal wireless code to, sorry. All right, establish a 2,500-foot setback from any WTF antenna to residences. Thank you so much. Went by a little faster than I expected.
Thank you.
And please don't stop my time until my slides come up. One back from there, one back from there. There you go. All right, now slides. Thank you very much for the time, and I appreciate you allowing the slides. All right, so we had some misinformation here from the city attorney, and I'm going to clarify that right now to make sure that you have the proper information to make your decisions. You can regulate the operations of cell phone towers. We're going to show you why. That was never preempted from local authority in the 1996 TCA. We have evidence to prove what congressional intent is. We are going to compare the 1995 version in the fall of 95 to the version that passed in February of 1996. And there is the link where you can see it for yourself later. Next slide, please. What we have is 95 on the left, 96 on the right. It's extremely important for you to understand that in 95, the telecom lobbyists that wrote this legislation wanted to preempt 4 things. Look at the red word, operations. They wanted to preempt from siting, placement, construction, modification, and operations from the local communities. There was a lot of discussion between the senators at that time, and they decided they weren't going to preempt that much from local authority. And when they passed the bill in February of 1996, take a look to the right, and I'll read very carefully. General authority, except as provided in this paragraph, nothing in this act shall limit or affect the authority of state local government except placement, construction, and modification of personal wireless facilities. Therefore, you can clearly see, everyone, including these attorneys, that the operations of cell phone towers was never preempted from local authority. You took an oath before you served. The California Constitution, Article 1, Section 1. We have inalienable rights for the pursuit of happiness, privacy, and safety. Our laws are in conflict. This RF guideline they talk about is not protective. We have the evidence to prove it. I metered an apartment building in Sebastopol over this weekend. I talked to all the people who lived there for 9 years. It's on my website, scientistforwiredtech.com/Sebastopol. The video will be up tomorrow. You will learn that these people are being injured and being killed from something that is about 10% of the FCC RF guideline. The evidence is clear. This is way too close to people. This was a macro tower that was actually too low for what it should be. These people are in the main beam. It's coming right into their bedroom windows. What we are seeing from these small cells, I can also show you a link. 170,000 radiation units, 100 feet from a small cell in a parking lot at the ground level. You climb to a second-story bedroom window, that number climbs significantly. These are hazardous levels. We know this. The science has proven it. Our own federal government has proven it. They released the results in 2016 and 2018. Our laws are in conflict. You are in trouble here. Now we have other people that are going to continue with the slides, but they do have a request to begin with.
4G and 5G can be deployed on micro towers. Okay, it has safety and privacy. Inalienable rights protected by Article 1, Section 1 of the California Constitution. CPMRA-WTFs near homes would be a 24/7 surveillance and crowd control grid, would violate both safety and privacy. Property values dropped 20% when wireless telecommunications facilities, WTFs, are closer than 1,500 feet from homes. 1/3 of a mile equals 1,760 feet. 1/2 kilometer, 1,640 feet. Real-time disaster at 503 Mariano Drive in Sonoma, 28 feet from pole to home. 12,000 PU M² peak RF radio microwave radiation already near the pole. there's no significant gap in Verizon coverage. 20 to 25% of $800,000 is $160,000 to a $200,000 loss. Tens of thousands of peer-reviewed independent studies adverse effects from RF microwave radiation exposures. Early dementia, Alzheimer's, MLS, ALS. Cognitive impairments, sleep disturbances. Immunocompromises and melatonin suppression. Cardiac problems, heart palpitations, infertility, and DNA damage. Heart and brain cancer, NTP and Reminisce, something. Liabilities due to dangerous condition of public property. Neurobehavioral symptoms near cell towers. And you can take a look at this, some of these things. Fatigue, sleep disturbance, headaches, feeling of discomfort, difficulty concentrating, depression, memory loss, visual disruptions, irritability, hearing disruptions, skin problems, cardiovascular, dizziness, loss of appetite, movement difficulties, nausea. I've lived with a partner for 8 years with EMS. I can swear by every one of them. The one thing before all of this, too, is I lost a wonderful student. He didn't make it to 21. He was the most hooked up kid in school from 10 years old on. At the age of 20, he developed brain cancer on exactly the same size that he had his Bluetooth, did I say that right? Bluetooth telephone apparatus since he was 10. The tumor's in the same shape. It's the first of a series of medical, medical court procedures that are being able to, doctors are determining that it was a direct cause of his overstimulation with gaming and the Bluetooth. So that's that.
Skip that.
Okay, Professional Trevor Marshall.
Please skip.
Skip. Mill Valley, CPMRA-WTF's key facts.
Can you wrap up?
Coverage is the test in California law, not capacity. And you have a link there that you can read. The applicant must prove significant gap in coverage and use least intrusive means to close any alleged gap. Wireless video is massive energy, hog versus fiber, versus fiber optic. 110 PUM squared peak RF microwave radiation is all that is needed for telecommunications. In other words, calls.
Okay.
Sir, can you wrap it up? And can you also please
give so far 17,300 square
Great.
feet.
Thank you, sir. Can you give us your name, please, and address?
Go, it's your turn.
Yeah, could we get your name and town?
Hang on.
Folks?
Hang on.
His
hang
name
on,
is-
Hang on. Wait.
My name is Robert Ernst.
Yes.
Yes.
And what town?
San Rafael.
Okay.
Then just
And I teach and I do guest artist work at TAM.
Great. So just a little organization. Mr. McGavin, you're going to have to stay over there. That's where the speakers stay, not over here, over there. If you like your slides advanced, the speaker can say, next, your time is up.
My name is Kim Hahn. I live in San Rafael, and I'm doing this off the top of my head, so bear
Great.
with me. Do you want this?
No, Mr. McGavin's time is up, ma'am.
Okay. Dr. Trevor Marshall, it seems like there's a discrepancy between what you folks are seeing and what I'm seeing here. Is it because you're behind?
So if you like the slides advanced, you can ask them to be
Oh, here we go.
advanced.
Thank you. Thank you
Super.
so much. So this is obviously a graph that shows the power density, and you can tell from the square, there's squares along the side, that from 100 yards from cellular phone, you have only 0.001, and I believe that's milliwatts per centimeter squared. And I'm going to go to the next slide. Dr. Trevor Marshall, how radio waves make you sicker. Another graph that you can probably enjoy trying to figure out. Immune dysfunction leads to autoimmune disease, chronic fatigue, idiopathic pain, MS and cancers, premature diseases of the aging. This is from mystreetmychoice.com, which I recommend that you all go to, about biologically based RF microwave radiation exposure guidelines. And I think I'm not going to go any further on this because it's highly technical, but I think you should take a look at it at some point. Okay, in the graph, you have no hazard at less than 0.1 milliseconds, microwatts per meter squared. Slight hazard at 0.1 microwatts per meter squared to 10 microwatts per meter squared. severe hazard at 10 microwatts per meter squared to 1,000, and extreme hazard at greater than 1,000. Signal strength RF microwave radiation exposure guidelines, decibel milliwatts. Negative 75 decibel milliwatts. Power flux density would be 0.018 microwave per square. 5 bars on a cell phone. 5 bars on a cell phone, which many of you are already receiving when you're making phone calls. That's the important part. Okay. Environmental effects do not equate to human health effects. Thousands of independent studies confirm harm far below FCC RFR MPE guideline. 2018 NTP Ramazzini Institute, malignant heart tumors, brain tumors, and DNA damage. 1978 U.S. Embassy personnel in Moscow found cardiac, blood, neurological chromosome damages, and elevated cancer. 2017 letters opposing the SB 649 Senate bill. Dr. Beatrice Golomb, Dr. Martin Paul, and Dr. Trevor Marshall. I recommend that you try to find those folks on Google and look up what they've written.
Yeah. If I could ask you to wrap up now.
I'm finished. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker, please.
Hi, Frank Leahy. I think I know some of you have been here before, both on safety issues. Once with my son Nathaniel, who got hit in the crosswalk at TAM, and last year on the bike safety issue. 39-year veteran of Silicon Valley. I'm a VP of engineering at the company that has a big tower in San Francisco, and I have a background in electrical engineering and computer science. I only bring that up to let you know that I'm versed in the background of the technology and the companies. In fact, I've dealt with quite a few of these companies. They used to be called Bell South and Time Warner. They're no longer those names. They've changed names since. I'd like to talk about two things. Fire safety is first. There's a lot of people saying that 5G is going to improve fire safety. That's not the case, and there's two reasons for that. First is the fire safety issue in Mill Valley is related to cell phone coverage. And the reason, let's say that 5% of the people in Mill Valley have issues. We'll just call it 5% for now that have issues with cell phone coverage. The reason is geographic and economic. Geographic, you go around the corner, you get in a canyon where you can't get it. You could put up another couple of towers and it's still not going to get there. And the other problem is that is economic. It's just not worth their while. AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon. 1% of their customers can't get service, they're not going to put another tower up, right? It's just not worth their while. Same thing is going to be true with 5G. Because there's nothing that says that they're going to guarantee coverage of all the residents of Mill Valley, right? You're still going to have these problems of the end of the road, around the corner. They're going to put up a tower, it's not going to get there. They're not going to put another tower up for the two homes at the end of that canyon. It's just not going to happen. So you're going to have approximately the same number of people who are going to have cell phone coverage problems with 5G. The second thing is that these antennas require power, right? If in a fire, the power goes out in a section of the city, they're all going to go down. Unlike what we have currently, where the 4G, you have a small number of 4G towers. You can do battery backup. You could do have a backup system on a small number of towers, and it works today. It's not going to work with 5G. The third point is that fiber, if you use fiber to the home, it's just like the old POTS systems, plain old telephone service. The fiber will get there, the light will get there from the head end, just like POTS used to be able to, the power went out, your phone still worked, right? Okay. Second thing I'd like to talk about, I know I'm getting close here. Permits. For the permit, there's not enough detail about what these people, what's on the application. So just like Tesla did ludicrous mode, I don't know if you know this, in 2016 they did a software update over the air, turned the Tesla into the fastest car on the road. Same kind of things, these companies can do that unless you ask for model, hardware version, software version, how many channels, all these details. They will upgrade these things over the air, and you will not know it happened. So I think you need to be very detailed on 2073-050A. There's a checklist This needs to be a very detailed checklist that you ask for as part of the permit.
Yeah. Thank you, Frank. And I know you sent us written comments.
Right.
And we'll,
Just last thing, municipal fiber. All these things will be solved by municipal fiber because there would be no reason for these companies to come into Mill Valley. If everybody had fiber to the home, these companies wouldn't install 5G because they don't need to, because no one would buy it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Your name and address, please.
My name is Jess Lerner. I live in Fairfax, where we addressed this issue last night, and I was so moved by the turnout and hearing about what you guys are thinking about doing here, I decided to come to Mill Valley. I want to thank you for your consideration on this issue, that you're clearly taking it seriously, including the health concerns, despite being hampered by federal law, and I'm really appreciative of the work you're trying to do. So I wanted to speak because I have personal experience with this issue. I have health impact from wireless technologies. Basically, for the last 10 years of my life, I haven't been able to sleep when I'm near wireless cell towers. When I'm near a router that's on, I can't be anywhere near that. And when I'm near smart meters. I can tell you more. I don't have enough time in the 3 minutes to describe how did I figure this out. I was in graduate school at Brown University doing environmental studies and studying environmental science, and I was also at the time realizing my sleep was impacted by the wireless routers that we were just getting in our homes and the smartphones that were just coming out, and I started to not be able to sleep in cities. I started to have headaches, heart palpitations, which I've had very frequently. When I fly in a plane, I have that as well, and when I'm in densely populated areas or even at friends' houses where they have a lot of technology. So this is an issue that continues to plague me. If 5G were to come out, it's a cumulative effect. So we've got all the technology already happening, and as they showed in that video, it would be layered on top of the next one. It is invisible. Most of us can't feel it, although I can. You can't hear it unless you use a radio frequency meter, which will give you a sense of what it sounds like. It'll give you the audible aspect of it, and you'll have a sense of, oh, this is something physical that's in our environment. It's going through our bodies. It's affecting us on a biological level. There are tons and tons of studies on this. The FCC funds studies to show that it's not affecting us, but there are lots of studies I'm happy to pass on to you at another time. I know a lot of people here have expertise as well, and I do know I'm getting the sense that you take the health concerns very seriously, and I would invite you to, there's tons of people here with lots of knowledge on how can we deal with this issue, even if the federal laws are saying we can't address health. What are the other ways we can get around that and address this ordinance so that 5G isn't on top of everyone's residence, and once they're up, they're not going to come down. So it's really important that from the beginning we address this properly. So when I was having these problems, I saw a lot of doctors, including some of them are very well known, like Dr. Mark Hyman. You might have heard of him. He's on the East Coast, where I was at the time. He knows, and all of his doctors know, this is a real health concern. They turn off their wireless routers at night. There's plenty more evidence like that, so those of us who have this concern, we're not crazy. It's so convenient to not look at this in the face. It's so hard to deal with. I wouldn't blame you if you were like, I don't want to think about this, but it is real, and we do have to think about it now. So even though we are challenged on these issues, Professor Joel Moskowitz of UC Berkeley has done a tremendous amount of work on this. He's addressed policy. He has lots of research. I'm happy to send you some links. I'm running out of time, but I just wanted to thank you and ask you to look into the alternatives. And I'm a big proponent of fiber optic as well, which can solve these problems. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Vicki Sievers. I do education and outreach work with the EMF Safety Network. I live in San Rafael. And I'd like to revisit a moment in Mill Valley history and re-thank this mayor for her 2010-2011 understanding of resident alarm about microwave radiation and specifically from PG&E smart meters. She got it right away and not only provided receptive response and understanding to residents, but she actually mounted a web page about smart meters on the town website, offering residents information and opt-out procedures. We know of no other California town or city who did this at that time. My city is behind. I certainly applaud your efforts and your achievement. My city's 2004 vintage telecom ordinance was good in its time. It as far as directing installation away from residential zones and towards commercial, and in terms of permitting requirements. Right now, the Director of Community Development and Planners know that that ordinance is not protective enough and are researching the current work of Petaluma and San Anselmo and soon of Mill Valley, I would guess. Having participated in meetings with Supervisors Connolly, Rodoni, and Sears, and having digested, for example, San Anselmo's recently amended ordinance and watched that council grapple with choking federal and state restrictions on protecting the public from radiation harm, I'm convinced, as has been mentioned by a couple of other speakers, that cities and towns and the county would serve themselves and their public well by sharing the best resources, some of which are present here tonight, in order that all communities across Marin might be protected by sturdy, appropriately uniform ordinances that would build a united fortress against telecom overreach. That said, ordinances are a defense game, and the best offense is pursuing safe, reliable, enduring, wired systems, fiber optic systems. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Gaunt. I live at 120 Morning Sun Avenue in Mill Valley. I'm delighted to be here to speak. I was going to charge in and say, gosh, great work on the ordinance, and I think you've got a massive loophole here still. And now I'm about to say, I think you've got a small loophole still here, and I'm going to talk about a couple of suggestions to your ordinance. I know you want to try and pass something quickly. Three things. Verizon are applying for any residential any right-of-way to be considered fair game. And I was very happy to hear Danielle talk about actually we are excluding public right-of-way from the residential zones. But when I read through the ordinance, and I know I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not as good as you are at doing this, but it didn't seem very clear. There were several places where I felt like the language needed to be strengthened in order to make it very clear that you are wanting to prohibit these small 5G cells from all residential zones, even in the right-of-ways. So I urge you, I've got two handouts to pass around at some point. One is the three suggestions I'd recommend that you make to this particular ordinance. And I've also went through and outlined some areas where you might want to change the language. Just, if you insert these words here, I think you can do it. I know you can do better than me on that because you're lawyers, but the second area is about setbacks. There's nothing in there right now about setbacks. You've got 1,500 feet between cell towers in mixed-use and commercial zones, okay? But there's nothing there about setback within that mixed-use commercial zone from a residence if you happen to be unlucky enough to be in that zone close to a cell tower. Petaluma asked for 1,500 feet from each residence. They achieved 500 feet. That 1,500 feet is actually linked to plenty of studies that show that evidence of harm from living close to a cell tower increases after 1,500 feet. So if you're less than 1,500 feet, you incrementally get affected the closer you are. We're actually asking you to put something in there. I understand that none of us want to get sued, right? And you want to avoid a total ban. And to feel like you're playing, you're working with these guys, but I really urge you to put something in there. We'd prefer 500 feet. We're realists. We'd work with you on 200 feet, but something, we saw that video earlier. Oh, I'm out of time almost. We saw the video earlier saying, this stuff, they were boasting about going 1/3 of a mile and more. So the third point is that we need some kind of upper limit, specifically in the ordinance. There's nothing there about actual power limit that you want to set as a limit and then regularly monitor and test. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I'm also going to leave you with one more thing. Since we can't talk about health, these are all ways that other cities and towns have opposed cell towers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hopefully not, last but not least, sort of difficult given the fact that people in front of you end up talking about some of the things you may have had on your mind to speak about. My name is Paige Hudson, and I'm very grateful to be a Mill Valley native and to have had the opportunity to raise my 3 children in this incredible community. I feel deeply about this town and our values and our commitment to one another to have a shared community and respect individual liberties. And of particular import tonight, of course, is creating an environment in both our homes and in public spaces that are healthy and safe. I was going to share with you an anecdotal but very important story that was, that's very demonstrative of the thousands of peer-reviewed scientific studies showing the health hazards of Wi-Fi radiation. But I think you've probably heard enough about that. But I do have a very dear friend that inspired me to be a part of this cause and to bring attention to both the mayor and to Danielle, the things that were happening and unfolding in our neighborhood. And she's tonight not able to be with us because she's very sick from a level 4 glioma, which you may recall we just lost Senator John McCain to. Rachel did a great job in being very pragmatic and pointing you in the direction of the ways in which we could make the ordinance more robust. And we have a series of recommendations around ways to make sure we're in legal compliance. I would like to, therefore, touch on something that somebody said earlier, where if we provide an opportunity for access in a more efficient way, we would not have to take on the installation without our consent and, frankly, many people's knowledge of these small cell towers in our neighborhoods. I was told an interesting analogy, which I think will help you beyond all the numbers and all the data, understand the value that fiber optics can have, and giving people an opportunity to, the telephone poles are already being staged with fiber optics. So it's really about just taking that fiber optics from the pole to the house. It not only is it more efficient and faster and cheaper, of course, it is vastly safer. And just to give you an analogy of that kind of summarizes all those key benefits, if you were to imagine somebody out in center field and I'm at home plate, and that person at center field is waving their hand, say, "Hey, I want to watch a 4K video." With fiber optics, you take the ball and you throw it straight to center field, and that person gets to watch their 4K video without interruption, without additional resources needed. By contrast with the 5G and 4G technology, you have a situation where that same person is in center field saying, "Hey, I want to watch this 4K video." You're running that Wi-Fi signal up to the top of a tower. It's not throwing it straight to center field. It's spraying it out into the outfield, the infield, the people in the stadium, and the people outside the stadium, which you have to do 5, 6, 7 times because the delivery of it is so diffused that that person is going to require several hits in order to launch that 4K video. So you have a situation in which there's a spraying, if you will, of radiation that's really quite unnecessary. Just like with smart meters, we have an opportunity to opt out. We should allow our residents to have consent. We have many recommendations on how we can do this legally, which we will provide in the deck that we sent earlier this week. But I really encourage you to, most importantly, ensure that there are the welcome mat into our residential communities for telecommunications agencies who are only benefiting from this, that you withdraw that welcome mat and protect the community.